Well, welcome everyone to Consider This, our little space in YouTube where we can look at some ideas, thoughts, concepts that we all know about, things that we've all been told and heard our whole lives, but maybe for some reason we haven't quite internalized them. We don't really know what they mean. We haven't been able to actualize them in our lives. I'm Jenny Meyer. Thank you so much for joining me. This is my first YouTube specific video, so I'm really excited to get this going and start producing some content and working with you all, talking with you all, and having a conversation about how we can improve and make our lives the very best that we can. One of the things that I was really trying to figure out when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about in my first little YouTube specific video is something that I thought was basic, fundamental, and what came to me was this idea that I played around with the last time I did do a talk about primary beliefs and primary belief systems and their purpose and their function and how they influence us. And I think you would be hard pressed to even be alive right now and not know how beliefs impact you. Everybody has heard that, you become what you believe. That's something that Oprah says. Everybody's heard quotes like Henry Ford saying, if you believe you can do a thing or believe you can't do a thing, then you're right. All of these ideas that we've heard and that we've touched and that have come to us. But have you ever really stopped to think about what that really means and looked underneath the surface of how that's actually impacting what's happening in your life? Because so many times we stop at the surface and we forget that there's an underlying happening in everybody that creates all of these things. And these beliefs that you hold are so important. And I personally think that one of the most important beliefs that you have is simply your belief on what life is. At a primary level, what do you really believe about life? If you were to take the sentence, life is blank, how would you end that sentence? What would you say that life is? Is life a game? Is life an adventure? Is life struggle? Is life hard? And maybe even a couple of those are true, depending on the situation that you find yourself in. But that primary belief dictates everything that you see and how you interpret everything else in your world, like everything else. And these beliefs are provided to us in a couple of different ways. We're kind of inoculated with these beliefs when we're very young, from our families, from our schools, from our houses of worship, from our churches or religious centers, from our families. And so we kind of just absorb them like sponges. We don't even really realize that that's what we're absorbing. We just watch how the people around us behave and the words that they use to explain their experience. And then we create this interpretation of that. And it usually mirrors a lot of what other people believe in our small little initial communities, right? The other way that we get some of these beliefs is taking that little scheme that we're learning from all of these other people, and then also how our personalities decide to interpret the things that happen to us. Our life brings us events and situations and people, and when those people and situation and events happen to us, we have to give it meaning. We have to give it purpose, and so we have to define what it means for us, and that's one of the reasons how we create our beliefs. And some really important key beliefs are made in this way. The question is that have you ever really stopped to think about what those beliefs are? And not necessarily if they're valid, and I'll talk about that in a second, but really more like, is that what you want? Like, there's this idea when you're living your life that truth is objective. Like, this is the experience. This is what's happening. Like, there's events happen in your life. The events are this. And so your interpretation of those events ends up for you becoming truth. And of course, if it's the truth, then everybody must agree with you and it must all be the same and all of that's right. But yet in that, we also know that that's actually not accurate. There is no objective truth. And when you come into the realization that there is no objective truth, that means that your subjective truth can be whatever you want it to be. For example, just a simple thing of two people walking into a room and both of them having an experience of the temperature of that room in two totally different ways. The temperature of the room is the temperature of the room. But I might think it's cold and you might think it's hot. But there is the relativity in that. If it's relative, it's not true, right? I mean, I like to say that to my daughter a lot. If it's relative, then it's not real, is actually what I say to her. Like, you get to define that experience, and we forget that that's the truth no matter what happens. No matter what happens, we have the ability to decide what the things that we experience mean to us and how we're going to engage and interpret them. So it's very unlikely that you've really thought about that in a very deep level. I know I hadn't for years and years and years. You know, like you don't think about it. The assumption is, well, this is what it is. But the assumption should always be, what do I want it to be? So in those moments when life happens to you, you know, someone passes away, a relationship ends, you lose your job, maybe you get really sick. Everybody has moments of those tremendously difficult experiences, and there are people who come away from those experiences better, and there are people that come away from those experiences, I don't want to say worse, but not as positively. And it really comes down to a matter of how you decide to engage with what happens to you, and you decide how to engage with what happens to you based on these primary beliefs, based on what you think life is supposed to be about. You know, maybe your family has a history of heart disease, and so when you start to contribute to that and create symptoms of that, then your belief unconsciously, like not even aware of it, is, well, I'm going to have some heart problems because it's just in my family. That is an assumption, and it doesn't have to be your subjective truth. You can alter it and make it be about something else and potentially change your experience with it. Now, I don't want to paint rainbows and unicorns. My partner has a heart. He sometimes accuses me of that a little bit and try to make everything the best that I possibly can, in that it's going to keep the bad things from happening. That's not possible. Life is a balancing act. It's a dance, I think. That's my belief. My belief is that you can't stop challenges from happening. You can't stop the uncomfortable from coming. What you have control over is what you're going to decide the uncomfortable means. Is it going to be a lesson? Is it going to be an opportunity? Or is it going to be a challenge? Are you going to make yourself the victim? Or are you going to empower yourself to grow from it and become better and use it for some benefit for yourself? And that's really the power of your choices and your beliefs. You know, I think that we don't really spend enough time asking ourselves the internal questions about ourselves about this. So for example, if, you know, I'm having a hard time engaging with something with my daughter, or you know, I'm struggling to connect with her, I'm not understanding where she's coming from, or a decision is made and I'm like, what is going on? It's very easy to, on the surface, point fingers and blame and say blah, 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 blah. But what I also need to do is take 100% responsibility, because responsibility is just that, it's your ability to respond. Take 100% responsibility of that situation. Sit down and say, what am I contributing to this? Because I know I'm contributing something. I have to, because I'm involved in it. And nothing happens without your involvement if you're present. It's not possible. And then looking at that, and then the questions that I ask myself are, what are my thoughts about this? And are my thoughts about this true? And of course, the next question is, do I want those thoughts to be true? Because I have the ability to change those thoughts, because those thoughts come from beliefs. And that's where I go to uncover these really deep things about what I believe and how is that impacting me. Once you're able in the moment to pull, and that's the first step, is giving yourself the practice to pull back enough that you can have the moment and you can ask those questions, then you can start asking yourself, what do I want to believe? What do I want to be my truth? Because you're making it up regardless. So you can either make it up for your good, or you can make it up for your disempowerment. And it's totally your call, whatever you decide to do. One of the beliefs that I have secured myself to in the last 5 or 7 years is that I'm going to be on purpose. I'm going to do things intentionally and on purpose, because I'm going to do what I need to do in order to create the best life that I can. I'm recently learning in the last, 3 to 5 years that doesn't come without uncomfortable. That doesn't come without pain. But that my real power isn't avoiding the pain or avoiding the fear or avoiding the uncomfortable or avoid the anger. What it is deciding how I want to define, how I want to believe those things are here to help me, and choosing that they are here to help me in some kind of way, and figuring out what I want that to look like for myself. And I think that when people say, live for yourself, that's really what they mean. And that's a statement that I really had a really hard time with for a lot of years, because I'm a relational person. I'm a compassionate person. I like to serve. I want to do for other people. And that statement felt very selfish to me. But when you pull back from it and look at it at that deep level, which is what I wasn't doing, when you pull back and you look at it at that deep level, you understand that what it means to live for yourself is to ask yourself those really deep questions. Like, what do I want to believe about this situation? What do I want my truth to be? And you start changing that by living as if it is your truth. Knowing that it's not going to be automatic yet. You have to practice it. If you're going to start to work, if you say to yourself, maybe you need to lose a little weight, or maybe you want to get stronger, maybe you're like me and your weight is okay, but you just want to power it out, and you want to be more firm and strong. What you really need to do, what is so hard, but what you really need to do is just say, I'm strong, and then do what it means to be strong, which for me means eating the food that I know that I need to eat, and exercising the way that I know that I need to exercise, and lifting. Like, to me, that's what strength is lifting, and moving myself in that direction, knowing that the process is slow, in the beginning, that it might take you a little while to make the steps. But like Mel Robbins says, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you go. You just start doing it. And every day it becomes a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more comfortable. And eventually you get to a place, where it's like, oh my God, I'm strong. And you are living it, like it's real. And I think what trips so many people up is that it doesn't feel real initially, because we've been telling ourselves a lie, essentially, of what we thought was truth. Maybe not a lie, maybe a fantasy. You've created a fantasy in your head, a story in your head. And this is the story that you were given. Like, you believed in Santa Claus until you were 10, and then one day Santa Claus just wasn't there anymore, and your next Christmas after that might not have felt quite as magical. But eventually the magic comes back, because your definition and your belief about what Christmas is about and what Santa Claus is changes, and then it becomes real for you. And that's how these things happen. And it's hard. And I think sometimes the other thing we do is we see people who just seem to have it all together. Social media makes us feel like so many other people don't struggle. It is a struggle. It's not a kind, I want to say you have to be so careful with your words. It's not a constant battle, but it's constant progress. It's constant steps. And all of it begins by taking the moment that you need to really ask yourself, what do I believe about this? And do it in a microsecond. Do it in a micro situation. Do it with one thing, with one situation, not even a big theme, one situation. Maybe you had a bad meeting with your boss. Take that meeting with your boss and ask yourself, what do I think about what just happened? And you're not going to have to look hard for this. You're going to know immediately what you think it means. And once you've listened, if you've already labeled it bad, right? So you already know it's bad. So lay it out. Why is it bad? How is it bad? What does it mean? What are you not doing? What were you accused of? How do you feel? All of those things, lay it all out. That's not the hard part. The hard part is once you lay all of that out, you ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? And then you sit with that for a minute and let it feel it, because if you don't feel it, nothing's going to happen. Sit with that for a minute and you feel it. And then you say, what do I want this to be? If I could look at this from any other perspective, and I could make up anything I wanted to about this, and I know make up is going to be a word that's going to trigger some people, but it's true. If you could make up anything about this that you want, would you choose to make up what you did originally? Would that be the truth you would pick? If you could pull a card that would say the meaning of this situation is XYZ, would that be the XYZ meaning that you would choose? Or is that the default card that you're picking from the deck and you just haven't really given yourself the opportunity to even read any of the other options? Have you ever read any of the other options? Have you ever stopped to think, what if I'm wrong? What if it doesn't mean this? And the next thought after that is, do I want it to mean this? Does it meaning this help me in some way? Because if it doesn't help you, then you've made yourself a victim. And that's just the way that it is. And that's a really hard pill to swallow a lot of times, like 90% of the time. It's the hardest pill to swallow ever. But I'm telling you, I really, really think that's the only way to feel good and to reap the benefits of everything that life has to give you. And it comes down to taking a simple moment to ask yourself a simple question. What if I'm wrong? Is this what I want to believe? What could my new truth be? And doing it in the small moments first. And as you do that in the small moments, which is how I got started in doing this, and you get good at it, when you start getting good at seeing how things can be seen from a different perspective, when you're able to do that, then you can really dig deep and look at some of these, like, what is life? End of sentence kinds of beliefs. Life is, work is, love is, whatever it is. And start asking yourself the deep questions about what you want, how you want to feel, what's important to you. And then beginning the journey to create it for yourself. So I hope that gives you something to think about and really do something with, because there's nothing in what I just said that we don't know. Like, we all know it at some kind of level, we all know it. But we don't allow ourselves the time and the space to really think about the implication of it. And that's what I would encourage you to do this week, tomorrow, the next moment you have outside of watching this video when something happens. Even if it's positive, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? What does this mean? Well, maybe don't ask yourself, what if I'm wrong, in the positive things. That might not be helpful. But you know what I mean. So thank you again so much for checking this channel out and finding me. Please like and subscribe, share if you thought this was cool. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I really want to dialogue. I want to dig deep. I want to get to know people. I want to explore this thing, and with you, make myself even better, because I think that's what it's all about. So thank you very much, and have a great day.